everyone. Welcome to the Top Lessons podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Inglot, and with me, I have a special guest today. She is someone I call a unicorn, and I'll explain why in a second. But she is a woman who inspires other women through her work and her leadership. She deserves an introduction fit for British royalty. She is an OBE, and I will explain this in 1 second. She is a data science pioneer, a businesswoman, co-founder and CEO of Dunnhumby. She revolutionized the world of retail and consumer packaged goods and pioneered the Clubcard and other global loyalty programs. She is the founder and chair of the Female Lead, which recently celebrated its 10th year anniversary. It's a non-for-profit organization empowering women through stories and science. And again, she's a unicorn. The OBE stands for, she received an award for her service in data and science and business in 2019 from the British royalty. It stands for the Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. And now today, I have the privilege of welcoming her to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Miss Edwina Dunn.
Well, thank you. What a beautiful and exalting introduction. Thank you.
Edwina, I have to ask, how does one get nominated for an OBE? And how did you find out that you actually won? I mean, I would love to know the story and your reaction to getting this privileged, esteemed title.
Well, do you know, it's somewhat of a mystery. I have learnt since that usually there's more than one person who writes a letter and nominates you. That's my understanding. I have no idea still who did that, but I'm very grateful to them. And I'm even more grateful because I won the award with my business partner and husband, Clive Humby. And there was a moment, and everyone I think can relate to this, when his letter came first and announced that he was going to get this award. And of course, he was very, very jubilant, very happy, and then looked very kind of sad and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, it should be both of us." And I tried to be supportive and generous. I did feel a little bit, here we go again. But anyway, the letter came a few days later and we were brought together with this lovely.
Edwina, if we can have you share the background and the concept behind the Female Lead. What inspired you to create this beautiful organization with over 9 million followers and also create a book alongside with it that profiles women from all walks of life? Yeah. We would love to hear the story and the journey of what was then to what is now.
Well, yes, I mean, I worked in an industry, data and technology, that was very male dominated, especially the era where I started. And I found myself working in an industry that was just as male dominated, which is retail and to a lesser extent, the big global consumer products companies. So, you know, Coca-Cola, Nestle, Kraft, those kind of companies. And I never saw a woman in the boardrooms where I would visit, you know, around the world. And so I wanted, when eventually I stepped away and we sold the business, I thought I wanted to do something to help women. Because like when I grew up, all I heard about was Marie Curie and Florence Nightingale. And I thought, well, they're fabulous, but they're long dead and quite old. And so I thought, surely there are some women alive who matter and who are creating impact, shaping the world. And sure enough, we found them. And the book and films we created were primarily for schools and school children. And we donated 25,000 books to schools around the world.
Edwina, if you can talk a little bit about the lessons of empowerment and the power that it brings to live a life that's fulfilled and a career that is full of purpose. and how that has led you to be the current founder of the Female Lead. I think those inspiring life lessons are going to bring about such a point to everyone to really find something that they're great at. But also, like I always say about finance, find something that you're great at, or if not, get out of that trade. Meaning that if you're not doing something that you're loving or being fulfilled in, you need to exit the trade. That means you need to cut your losses and move on and find something that you're really good at, because that's going to A, be fulfilling, and 2, empower you to get to that next step, whether it's making more money or making more connections or growing something to a bigger scale, something that will literally make you get out of bed every day and say, that's what I want to do. So if you could share about your life success in this direction and what empowered you.
Yeah, I mean, you work for a long time. It's really important you enjoy it. And, I'm really interested in this science of fulfillment. What is fulfillment? How does it differ from purpose or indeed happiness? And my sense is happiness is very transitory. You can be happy for 5 minutes and then miserable for the rest of the day, or vice versa. And you never know. But fulfillment is about living a good life. And, how do we measure that? How does it change as we age? And measuring that is my absolute focus and interest now. And, I love talking about fulfillment, particularly to women. And I just wonder if there are sort of dimensions of fulfillment that are just as important to men, and where we can start to talk about that rather than just purpose, which feels a bit cold and clinical.
Edwina, can you give us a little bit about some of the lessons you have learned throughout your career and your journey? I know everyone goes through their ups and downs, and maybe, a career path that you didn't expect happened, or something that, opened the door from one career path to another. I would love the audience to hear your perspective and to actually realize that a woman like you is successful because of the lessons throughout her journey. If you could share with us some of those lessons, I would love and greatly appreciate it.
Well, Kathy, I have 8, but you probably haven't got time for all 8, so I need to pick some. So you guide me, but I can talk at length on any of them, but I'm just going to mention them briefly and you say, okay, that one's good. So my first one is, I think your first job matters. Where you start, where you get that excitement and energy and activation. If you can get that right at the beginning of your career, I think it's a gift. So I think the first job you take, you need to be a bit thoughtful and careful. I was really lucky. I joined an amazing company that was totally entrepreneurial, a real meritocracy, and it was stuffed full of incredibly bright, largely men, I agree, but it was an eye-opener, and I just thought, this is fun. Work is fun. And that spurred me on through the rest of my career. And I always made sure that I was having fun while I was working hard.
Edwina, one of the things I wanted to discuss with you is what we touched on before, is the concept of the female lead and why it was developed and why you have this ambition to make sure that women can support women. One of the reasons we talked about earlier before is the strong need for women supporting women, because they're viewed as almost opposition, as almost people that should actually be against each other rather than for each other. And I think that's one of the things in my career that I saw more and more, is that there were a lot less women at the top who actually, surrounded me and supported me throughout my network. And it was just because finance was built that way. It was more men than women. And that was the nature of the industry. However, that doesn't mean it needs to be a woman against a woman. I think we are, sometimes okay with it because that's what we see around the table. But that doesn't mean it should be the case. So one of the things that I love about the female lead is that you open the door to make sure that women can actually foster a relationship of growth among each other, and that they see a win-win situation for both and not a you have to win for me to lose. So one of the reasons I wanted to discuss is why the female lead is such an important factor to all women is that you have placed an organization that is literally a culture of not just empowerment, fulfillment, but also a culture of inspiration. And also making sure that there is more women at the table together, supporting each other, helping each other throughout the network. And if you could touch upon the work that you do there and how that is all now one large multi-million organization where women are literally coming to you to say, I want to be a part of this network.
Yes, it's a good question. I mean, we started with making women visible. That was what role models was all about. And I think we achieved that actually fairly swiftly. And there have been lots of others who now spotlight and tell the stories of incredible women. I think the second thing is to reveal myths and truths about what women feel and experience, what's good, what's hard, where they might need some help in breaking through some of the societal constraints that exist. I mean, women haven't been equal partners in the workplace for quite a while. And we all know that there are challenges about, absolute equality, certainly in, pay and roles. And, we're still not getting women to the very, very top most of the time. So I think we've done quite a good job at revealing many of those. There's still a bit more, but I think that's pretty good. So I think the phase we're entering now is, we're seeing women, we know what the challenges are. So what are we going to change? And of course, change is the hard part of it. What are we going to do about it? Is something really going to alter and be better for all women? The only way we can achieve that, certainly can't achieve it as a charity or a media platform. We have 9 million women in our community. So that is a lot of voices and opinions. That's pretty important. But what we need are big, powerful organizations and leaders to now understand that at least 50% of their customers or consumers are likely women. I mean, the truth that we found is that men earn most of the money, but women decide how most of it's spent. And so if that's the case, what can leaders do to better understand women? And that's where I think the female lead can help and empower organizations to better relate to what is the most powerful economic force on the planet, women.
One thing I wanted to touch upon is the fact of, and it's a special word for me because being someone from Poland who was raised and grew up there, the word solidarity means a lot to me. Obviously, not just historical point in time, but also I think it's a description of why and how women should unify. And not just women, I think men are part of the equation due to the fact that if we're both at the table, we're both going to succeed knowing that one person can help the other. And solidarity to me is something that I think empowers that word of inspiration and encouragement, but also fulfillment in a way that there's purpose. And if you find someone who is literally helping you along your journey, whether it's career, whether it's personal, you will literally feel like you have a new mentor or a new family member.
Yeah, no, I love what you've said. And actually, if we can get women to agree on the important movements and points that we're trying to achieve, all for the greater good of the economy, for growth, for a better society. If we can get them to agree more than disagree, then I think we have a chance if we all stand together. It is really about sisterhood. And that's not, tying ourselves to railings these days, but it is about making sure that we give the best opportunities to the women around us and not see them as a threat.
One of the stories I remember that stands out for me is reading an article that was published on seatbelt research and the fact that women were not part of the study initially.
Yeah.
And how, almost when the seatbelt was developed, it was put into a car, and then someone said, well, what happens when a pregnant woman sits, and where does the seatbelt, go across the body? And they had to redo the study and the research because they literally forgot to include a woman, specifically a pregnant woman, wearing a seatbelt in the car, and how the airbags were going to function if she was pregnant, and to ensure that there was safety of the child, of the baby. And that kind of dawns, that kind of comment of forgetting to include women is a factor that I hope we never see again. Making sure that there's decisions and that there's inclusivity at the table, wherever there's management decisions being made. And I think this is where I love, hiring people who are from all types of backgrounds, is making sure that there is not a single person that thinks and looks and walks like me, for the simple fact that that person should be challenging. Am I making the right decision? Am I literally talking about the right thing?
Yeah.
And if someone thinks that there is something I forgot, or, I wasn't specific about, hey, there's a factor of XYZ that you didn't even consider, that they literally say, hold on, we need to redo this, or there is this challenge from me I need you to think about. And this recently came out at work that, I literally said on a call, and I wanted to make sure people heard it from me, is that I don't care what your seniority is. If you have a challenge and you think something wasn't included, speak up.
Yes, I mean, absolutely bang on. I agree totally. I mean, we have to follow through with action, not just, we can't just complain. We have to change and do something that speaks volume. I mean, if someone knew they were going to lose 50% of their customers, you can imagine the panic that would set in, and there'd be all sorts of activations on sales programs and marketing programs. But interestingly enough, most of those in most audiences are women, and they are systematically under-researched and often not the target of the advertising or the offer, or even sometimes the product.
Now, we discussed this concept of women making the decisions. And one of the recent articles I read is the CMO of Mercedes-Benz is a very educated and very well established woman called Melody Lee. And she is talking about how women are the deciding factor where the money is being spent. And Mercedes is literally going to focus on delivering to women, because there's events that are just exclusively for women now. And because, whether they're the head of the household, or whether they're the, the mother driving around all day in that SUV, I think there's this perception that women don't have a choice, and that is absolutely the wrong perception, right? Most of the households are women choosing where the money goes. And maybe, just maybe, they're not the breadwinner, but they may be the one actually saying, well, this is the amount of money we have, this is how we're going to spend it. Have you seen that? Have you been in those conversations where women are being discussed at that level?
I love that you say that, because that, in essence, was the very beginning of the whole idea that we had with retailers, which is people are different. And what you've just said is just as relevant to women. Women are no longer defined by their age or whether they're married or not. And that's a massive change. Understanding that women are making life choices that take them in very different directions. And those life choices are driving their buying patterns and So what we're seeing is increasingly sophisticated cycles of, I'm reaching this age or this life stage and I'm making these choices, and that's affecting how I invest, how I save, how I buy, where I live, and how I spread, the income that I have. So, you know, actually, it's about understanding all those different patterns, and it is much more complicated than, we're all going to follow the Disney dream of, I'm going to fall in love and live happily ever after.
Touching back on that comment on solidarity, I think it brings
Oh,
you back to that comment of remembering the movies of the young childhood that we all watched, the Disney princess movies, and how magical they were, and the
Yeah.
expectation that it was all going to be a fairy tale, especially towards women, finding the prince. And I think the female lead concept, the reason why I love it so much is that it literally propels the woman into the leadership role. And it reminds you that you don't need the prince. We could both kick down the walls and the windows and get what we want and get the same leadership opportunities. And I think it inspires you to kind of remember that you don't need, to be second in place, or kind of the fairy tale stops when you find some soulmate or partner. I think it goes back to the solidarity movement of making sure that women are for women. And it's not a feminism movement at all, I think. I think it's more about encouraging other women to do better and to do more than the generation before it. And I think the female lead is that inspirational, organization for me, where you remind yourself of the women that have done more ahead of you, and that you're just there to make sure that you impress more and you do more with them, and the intention that, you're better for the next generation. And I think it is inspiring to remember, the old movement of solidarity, which obviously has a historic place in history, but it also applies to the sisterhood comment of making sure that women propel other women into the same,
yeah.
Successful, empowering roles that they wish that they held. But because of situational, century old movements that held women back, we're now able to break those glass ceilings, break those, doors down together, and remember that 1 + 1 as 2 is better than 1. So I think it's an amazing movement, and I would love to make sure that we are continuing that
Yes.
together, and that every woman that empowers the other woman behind them, whether it's a sister, a cousin, a coworker,
Yes.
a colleague, a woman that literally just says, hey, can you be my mentor? Or can you help me? I don't know what else to do. Reminds yourself that you were in those shoes one day, and that, someone helped you when you were in those shoes. So now do the same for others, if not more. And I think that is what the female lead, to me, simplifies in its core, that it is literally
Yes.
a movement to help other women. And like you said, we don't need to chain ourselves to a wall. It's just more about being there together and saying, if I win, you win as well.
I mean, honestly, Kathy, what you've just said, what you've expressed is so female lead, but what you've said and how you've expressed it is really strong. I would like you at my side saying those things. It's important, and who wouldn't want to be with a whole group of women who saw each other as an ally and someone that they can help at different stages, because they will be there for them at some stage in the future? That's a great aspiration, a great goal.
I ask this question of all my podcast guests, and it's, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self, what would you say to that person? Would you give her words of encouragement? Would you say, hey, don't do this, do this? Would you say, don't worry about it, it all works out? And I think that the reason is because I think there's a lot of 18-year-old selves right now that need that inspiration from someone who is so successful. And I would love for you to talk almost at them and say, look, if I did this with these words of encouragement, so can you. If you can share some of those lessons and those words that you would say to your younger self, what would those be?
So this is a really hard question to answer, but I think if I had to pick one thing, I would say to my 18-year-old self, you are not the finished product. This is not all that you are or all that you will be. It's just the very beginning. And if you continue to learn and learn from others and grow and work hard and be open to other people's ideas, you can get better and stronger every year. And no matter how your career progresses. And I think we all think we come out ready-made and that everything's set and it's almost like there's a path that's predestined. And it's so easy to look back and say, those decisions I made, those changes I made me, but you don't see it until you're going through it. So I would say relax, enjoy the journey, buckle up. It's going to be a rough ride at times, but if you believe and keep working, you're going to come through the other end and you're going to like what you've become.
Edwina, thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today, for sharing your stories of success, for sharing the stories of how and the lessons that inspired you to build the empire that you have today, for literally leading the charge of being a woman for other women. I am privileged and honored that you took the time to spend with me and the audience and to share the immense experience and expertise that you have. I look forward to the next 10 years of the female lead and the amazing things that you will accomplish with all the amazing women in the organization. And I look forward to touching base with you again. And for everyone, I will link everything about Edwina, every way you can contact her and literally review her history and her amazing accomplishments. And again, I thank you for your time and the privilege of your time today. Have a wonderful time. Until next time, see you soon.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Kathy. It's been an honor and pleasure.